A pro-life Democrat battles for his seat. We're in Illinois to preview the race. Opioid answers. The president releases his plan to fight the country's drug epidemic.
Happy day. Oh, happy day. Happy day.
Today's Catholic Woman. We kick off an eye-opening series of interviews from the White House to Wall Street. Find out how these women practice their faith. And still dancing. Catholic Loyola Chicago and its unique team chaplain reaches the Sweet 16 of the NCAA basketball tournament. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, March 19th, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. A battle for the soul of the Democratic Party. Is there room for pro-lifers? In Chicago's Democratic primary, pro-life Catholic Democrat Dan Lipinski is on the ropes in the fight of his political life against abortion supporter Marie Newman. The race is one of several where liberals are targeting longtime Democratic incumbents. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi is in Chicago. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. Congressman Dan Lipinski is one of three pro-life Democrats remaining in the U.S. House. Since 1983, Lipinski has held this district. Dan took over for his dad when his dad retired in 2005. Now, the two major newspapers here in Chicago, as well as Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, are endorsing Lipinski, but NARAL, Pro-Choice America, is backing his competitor, Marie Newman.
Dan voted to defund Planned Parenthood.
Pro-abortion group NARAL and its partners have spent more than $1 million to defeat incumbent Representative Dan Lipinski. He's the co-chair of Congress's Pro-Life Caucus. Small business owner Marie Newman supports late-term abortion.
Now, for you, health care includes abortion rights and contraception.
Again, I trust women and families to make their own health care decision.
And Lipinski has supported the Little Sisters of the Poor in their fight against the Obama administration's contraceptive mandate.
I don't think that the Little Sisters of the Poor should be forced to provide abortion-inducing drugs, things that go against their beliefs.
It's called birth control, Mr. Lipinski, and when you provide birth control, it's general health care.
Lipinski sponsors the Conscience Protection Act, which would protect nurses and doctors who refuse to assist with abortions. It's passed the House several times.
Healthcare system, be part of the healing process for people. They should not have to participate in these actions that they find violate their conscience.
Illinois' 3rd congressional district includes Midway Airport and predominantly working-class neighborhoods where the median income is $66,000, and 3/4 have not graduated college. This weekend, pro-life college students and the Susan B. Anthony list knocked on their doors.
I'm good, I'm Sandy, nice to meet you.
Some students come from Catholic schools, Franciscan University in Ohio, and a place Lipinski taught, Notre Dame. It's these voters Lipinski is counting on. In 2016, Democratic primary voters in this district picked Bernie Sanders. Now that's motivating Newman, who hopes they'll pick her as a proud liberal. The unions are split on this race. The AFL-CIO is backing Lipinski. The SEIU is backing Newman. Lauren?
Jason, are we witnessing the death of pro-life Democrats in American politics?
Well, if you look at the polls, there was a recent poll from the Knights of Columbus and Marist, and they found that 25% of Democrats consider themselves pro-life, 25%, and 72% of Democrats say they're pro-choice. But when you look at the actual specifics of policy, for example, banning abortions, most abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy, that number is 56% of Democrats. 56% support that ban.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reporting from Chicago, where you will be witnessing the results. Thank you, Jason. Mississippi's governor is set to sign the country's strictest abortion restrictions into law. They would ban abortions after 15 weeks. Phil Bryant says he wants the state to, quote, be the safest place in America for an unborn child. The state's only abortion clinic is planning a legal challenge. The U.S. Supreme Court is set to hear arguments tomorrow in an abortion case, and people are already lined up outside to get a seat in the courtroom. Pro-lifers are challenging a California law that says pro-life pregnancy centers have to provide information about abortions, and they say it's an unconstitutional violation of their free speech rights. President Donald Trump calls for stiffer penalties for drug traffickers, including the death penalty. This is part of his push to fight the nation's opioid epidemic. And today he traveled to New Hampshire, a state hit hard by the crisis, to sell his proposal. White House correspondent Mark Irons brings us the Catholic response. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. Pope Francis says the death penalty is contrary to the gospel. Today, President Trump made it clear he thinks some traffickers in the drug trade should have to pay the ultimate price.
If we don't get tough on the drug dealers, we're wasting our time. Just remember that. We're wasting our time. And that toughness includes the death penalty.
The president wants Congress to pass a bill creating stiffer sentences for drug dealers who peddle opioids. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says prescription drug opioids, heroin, and synthetic drugs like fentanyl killed a record 42,000 people in 2016. Father Basil Cole, a professor of theology at the Dominican House of Studies in Washington, D.C., says solutions are needed, but he describes the president's call for the death penalty as a knee-jerk reaction.
There are other ways of doing things like this besides killing people.
In principle, the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches the use of capital punishment is the right of the state, if this is the only possible way of effectively defending human lives against an unjust aggressor. In practice, justice can be attained through incarceration. The Catechism continues, the cases in which the execution of the offender is an absolute necessity are very rare, if not practically non-existent.
Some of these drug dealers will kill thousands of people during their lifetime.
Father Cole says President Trump's justification for the death penalty is probably not a good argument.
You can say the same thing with people who have AIDS and spread AIDS. They can be killing people. You're going to kill them too? You just keep on going. And then, of course, let's kill abortionists because they're killing people too. Let's kill, let's kill, let's kill, let's kill. Doesn't seem to be the best or the highest solution to the problem.
Father Cole says it's the work of the laity to pray, petition lawmakers, and come up with better solutions. Within the president's plan is the call for a nationwide public relations effort to convince youth not to use drugs. Lauren?
The statistic I could not believe is that 160 people die every day from this addiction. White House correspondent Mark Irons, thank you so much. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe says he has been purposely and cruelly singled out by the president after being fired Friday night by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He was fired 2 days before his retirement when he would have gained his full pension. McCabe is believed to have leaked information to the media and may not have been forthcoming in the investigation into the FBI's handling of Hillary Clinton's emails. Joining us now is Bob Cusack, Editor-in-Chief for The Hill. Welcome back to the program.
Hey, Lauren.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions says that the firing of McCabe was justified. McCabe, as you heard, does not think that. He said these attacks on his credibility are a continuance of the FBI, of this attack by the administration on the FBI and on the special counsel. Why would they fire him with 2 days left before he gets his pension?
Well, the FBI chief, Chris Wray, also has found some wrongdoing on his behalf because we haven't seen this. Remember, this Department of Justice Inspector General report is coming out, and it has some bad stuff about McCabe, some of that which is in your report. So I think that they decided, listen, he should not get the full pension. Now, some Democrats are offering that come work for me and you can get your full pension. But clearly, when this report comes out, McCabe is going to be accused of some serious wrongdoing.
Since McCabe's dismissal, President Trump has lashed out at Special Counsel Robert Mueller. He has said that the Russia investigation is a total witch hunt with massive conflicts of interest. Could these attacks be viewed as trying to influence or impede the investigation?
Absolutely. I mean, Trump is nervous about this investigation. He's frustrated it's gone on for so long. I thought by now possibly would have wrapped up. I think this is going to continue past the election. So certainly he is going after Mueller and his team, which includes a number of Democrats who donated to Hillary Clinton.
President Trump himself cannot fire Mueller, and publicly the administration says that there are no plans to fire him. Could we see a Mueller dismissal in the days to come?
Well, he'd have to first get Rosenstein to
Fire
go
him.
along with fire him.
Right.
And if Rosenstein, who recently has told Congress, no, I see no reason to do that, then he'd have to fire Rosenstein and put somebody in the position that would carry that out. It would be James Comey times 1,000 as far as the political earthquake.
What would the consequences be?
There'd be a lot of pressure on Republicans in Congress to pass legislation to allow Mueller to complete his investigation. There is legislation on this, but Speaker Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, they haven't pushed it just yet.
There have been 13 indictments that have come out of this investigation against Russians. So why not let the investigation play out?
Well, that's what some Republicans, including Trey Gowdy, has said, Republican from South Carolina, saying let it play out and advising the president, stop tweeting about this. There have been indictments of Manafort, a lot of people on the campaign, no smoking gun as far as collusion, but we don't know a lot. And we won't know, I think, until maybe after the election.
Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren.
The Syrian government appears to be tightening its grip over a former rebel stronghold. It comes as President Bashar al-Assad visits military units in eastern Ghouta. Yes, that is him driving in his car. State media report President Assad praised his troops. The visit follows 4 weeks of relentless strikes on the Damascus suburb. More than 1,400 people have been killed since the military began its onslaught in mid-January. Women across Poland protest in front of the houses of Catholic bishops. The demonstrations come as church leaders call on the government to ban all abortions. Abortion currently is legal only if the mother's health is threatened, if the unborn baby is sick, or the pregnancy results from rape or incest. Poland is 87% Catholic. A landslide victory for Russian President Vladimir Putin. The win gives Putin an even stronger hold on his country, but his opponents are criticizing Russia for failing to provide a level playing field. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. No one here at the State Department is surprised Vladimir Putin won Russia's presidential election, but this one happens to fall as the United States is considering more sanctions against the Russians for their alleged meddling in the 2016 American presidential election. Some have put the blame squarely on Putin, who has dominated Russian politics for nearly 2 decades and is on track to become Russia's longest-serving leader since Joseph Stalin. The question is, how long does he want to remain in power?
Russian President Vladimir Putin addressing supporters and the press at his headquarters in Moscow shortly after winning his 4th presidential term Sunday night. Putin getting nearly 77% of the vote, his strongest electoral support ever. Putin thanking members of his election team, saying boosting the economy will be one of his first priorities. But not everyone is happy with how Putin won his re-election.
A choice without a real competition, as we have seen in this election, unfortunately is not a real choice.
Leaders of the international group, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, note the extensive coverage by state news media of Putin's activities, which gave him a significant advantage over 7 challengers. Alexander Baunov, a political analyst in Moscow, adds there were widespread reports of ballot box stuffing and forced voting. However, he says it's not likely to seriously damage Putin's tight control over the country.
The opposition demands to cancel some results and the Central Electoral Committee to cancel these results, to recount the votes, but of course it doesn't change the big picture.
Putin, for his part, dodged questions about his plans after serving another 6-year term. When asked if he would seek the presidency again when he is eligible in 2030, the 65-year-old snapped back, saying, "Don't be ridiculous. Do you think I will sit here until I turn 100?
Now, some are wondering whether Putin will try to stay in power for life. Chinese leader Xi Jinping recently managed it, scrapping presidential terms in his country. Now, in the meantime, whether it's forever or just for the next 6 years, many defense and political analysts say that with Putin in power, the relationship between the United States and Russia won't get any better, and it's still not likely to get better with the UK now considering more sanctions against Russia for allegedly poisoning a former spy on British soil. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland joined together for a candlelit procession to honor St. Patrick. The Catholic cathedral in Armagh, I hope I'm saying that right, named for the saint, turned green in his honor Friday. Archbishops from both faiths led the procession. And the Vatican releases the complete letter by Pope Emeritus Benedict about a series of books on Pope Francis. Late last week, it released only part of the letter. In the full version, Benedict says he had not read the 11-volume set. The Vatican says its decision to withhold part of the letter at the time was not based on any desire to censor. For more on this story, including a look at the controversy as it unfolded, please visit the National Catholic Register at ncregister.com. Pope Francis writes a thank you note to the people of Argentina on the 5th anniversary of his becoming leader of the Church. He tells of his great and intense love for his native country. The Pope also asks forgiveness, saying in part, although God entrusted me with such an important task, he did not free me from human frailty. He signs the note with the affection of a brother and father, Francisco. The first cardinal in history to recuse himself from a papal election over a personal scandal has died. Cardinal Keith O'Brien was Archbishop of St. Andrews and Edinburgh in Scotland until his resignation in 2013. Priests alleged the cardinal acted inappropriately toward them. He relinquished the rights and privileges of being a cardinal in 2015. O'Brien was 80 and had suffered from a heart ailment. Coming up, today's Catholic Woman, we discuss a recent study with surprising findings about the number of women who are practicing Catholics. And it's an honor. Pope Francis pays homage to a saint who's much beloved in Italy. A new survey reveals an eye-opening portrait of Catholic women. Georgetown University's Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate polled more than 1,500 women. Less than half of those women meet minimum requirements necessary for being Catholic. Only 24% attend weekly Mass, 38% never go to confession, and only 45% consider receiving Holy Communion important to being Catholic. Tonight, we launch today's Catholic Woman. We will examine the results of the survey that inspired me to do interviews with faithful Catholic women from Wall Street to the White House. I'm happy to welcome Mary Rice Hasson, Director of the Catholic Women's Forum at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. She is the author of numerous books, including Promise and Challenge, Catholic Women Reflect on Feminism, Complementarity, and the Church. You've edited together a wonderful selection. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
This survey to me is fascinating. It shows that less than half of the women are meeting the requirements for the Church, attending Sunday Mass, communion during Easter, and making sure that you get to confession. So why are Catholic women ignoring the basic tenets, the basic requirements of Catholicism?
So, Lauren, I think it's really a confusion. I think that's what we see in the data here, a confusion about what it means to be a Catholic. That being a Catholic is not about wearing the Catholic label. You know, it's not another characteristic of identity politics. That being Catholic says something about being in relationship, that we're in relationship with God the Father by virtue of being baptized and being adopted into his family. We're in relationship with the Church, which he's given to us so that we can grow in our relationship with him.
If we're in relationship with him, that means that there are commitments that you have to each other.
Right. And I think that's a missing link here, that if you see the church not as a matter of identity politics and labeling, but rather an acknowledgement that we're in relationship, every relationship entails commitments. And when we have commitments, we need to realize those are not paper commitments, they're not commitments kind of in our head. They're how we live out what we believe, how we live that relationship.
49% of women say they are proud to be Catholic. Why aren't more women proud of their Catholic faith?
I actually don't like the question about being proud, because I think of it more as if you're in a relationship with God and you see the church as this supernatural gift, there's an attitude of gratitude. It's not a question of sort of being the hometown fan and you're up in the bleachers and you're looking at the guys on the field and you're booing or you're cheering and I'm proud of my team. It's more a sense of really appreciating this great gift and being grateful.
Does the church need a different strategy to reach out to women?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things going on. One, I think the church has kind of looked at women as either an overlooked constituency or a constituency with a pile of consumer complaints. And instead, the church needs to see women as full partners in the mission of evangelization. So how do you bring women in to do that? You need to engage them, you need to feed them, and you need to invite them to serve. And I think that's what the church needs to focus on rather than trying to sort of keep women happy.
There was another statistic, 67% of women don't serve in the church. And so that could be where the disconnect is. Looking at this survey overall, the low number of mass attendees, the lack of pride, the lack of participation by women, the next generation of Catholics is being raised by these women and men. One might think that they're moving away from the core teachings of the faith. Do you think that's true?
I think we do have a problem. And I think the church needs to look at women and realize we're relational. And if the church is about relationships, we need to value the fact that for every woman, she's going to invite those who she cares about into relationship with God if she's in relationship with Him and in relationship with the church. So we need to really realize how important women are to the church's mission of evangelization.
Mary Rice Hasson, director of the Catholic Women's Forum at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Always wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Lauren.
For more of my interview with Mary Rice Hasson, go to my Facebook page, Lauren Ashburn, EWTN, and tune in tomorrow for my interview with Carla Harris. On Sundays, you can find Harris singing gospel at her Catholic Church choir, and during the week, you'll find her on Wall Street, where she works at Morgan Stanley. Harris tells me she always consults the Holy Spirit when she makes a business decision. Up next, Pope Francis hits the road to visit sites associated with a popular saint. And Keeping the Faith, a Christian-themed movie, is a big hit at the box office. Pope Francis is back in Rome after a short visit this weekend to towns where Padre Pio lived and died. He made the journey to Pietrelcina and San Giovanni Rotonda, located southeast of Rome, to mark 50 years since the Capuchin priest's death. Vatican correspondent Juliette Lindley has more.
Speaking in Pietrelcina, the town where Padre Pio was born, Pope Francis encouraged devotion to the Holy Mother Church, explaining how despite the failings of its members, it was beloved by Padre Pio. Francis then flew to San Giovanni Rotondo, where Padre Pio spent most of his life. Get well soon, the Pope tells this little boy who's suffering from cancer, and when you're better, you'll come to Rome. As the Holy Father walks through the children's cancer ward at the hospital of Padre Pio, parents are visibly touched by his smiles, his affection, his blessings. When St. Padre Pio founded the hospital more than 60 years ago, the official name was the Home for Relief of the Suffering. Now people from all over come to visit what is now a state-of-the-art medical center. Francis made the visit to the towns of Pietrelcina and San Giovanni Rotondo to mark the 100th anniversary of Padre Pio receiving the visible stigmata, or the crucifixion wounds of Jesus, and the 50th anniversary of his death. Pope Francis also visited the Church of Santa Maria delle Grazie and prayed before the saint's body. The Holy Father spoke about the importance of prayer during Mass with around 30,000 people at the shrine of St. Pio. He quoted the saint who said in a message he gave at the International Conference of Prayer Groups in 1966, "Pray a lot, my children. Pray always. Never get tired."
Pope Francis was the third pope to make the trip down to the town in which St. Pio lived. Pope John Paul II visited in May 1987 and beatified and canonized Padre Pio. Pope Benedict XVI paid homage to Padre Pio in June 2009. At the Vatican, Juliette Lindley, EWTN News Nightly.
A surprise at the box office this weekend. While Black Panther was the #1 movie, followed by Tomb Raider, the #3 film was a film on faith.
My dad was a monster, and I saw God transform him.
I Can Only Imagine is about the band Mercy Me's lead singer Bart Millard and his relationship with his father. The faith-based movie took in just over $17 million in the U.S. And finally tonight in the NCAA basketball tournament, a 98-year-old nun is called for traveling in a good way. Sister Jean Schmidt is the team chaplain for Catholic College Loyola Chicago. The team reached the Sweet 16 following upset wins over Miami and Tennessee. Sister Jean was at both games in Dallas, and she is traveling to Atlanta when the Ramblers, seeded 11th, faced 7th-seeded Nevada. And on Thursday, Sister Jean prays with the team before games. Afterwards, she sends emails with scouting reports and encouragement. Now that is one dedicated basketball nun. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook, where you will see some behind-the-scenes footage of my interview today at the White House. Good night, and God bless you.